Jovan, I mean, you've covered a lot of the best guys in the game, and you've seen alpha males, so to speak, find themselves and then eventually lead their teams. How do you see the Ant situation?
Yeah, well, excuse me. I think John made a good point of this kind of being a slow burn for Ant. I was there in Las Vegas for the Team USA minicamp, and to me, it seemed like Ant was clearly the best player on the team. But in talking to people, I mean, remember Joe had we did the poll where we talked to each player on the roster and asked them who's been the best player in camp, who's the best player in the team right now, and Jaren Jackson Jr. was overwhelmingly the favorite there, and he obviously had some pretty good moments, but yeah, I think by the
Yeah,
end
it
of the
didn't turn out
tournament,
so well. Yeah.
didn't age great.
Yeah.
But I think to John's point, like Ant, I think it took him a little bit to adjust. I remember that first scrimmage, he was going ISO heavy a lot, and it was very much my turn, your turn type basketball with that starting group, and that was something that I feel like that group never fully figured out. It got better throughout the tournament, but I thought Ant was kind of the face of that at first. But as things got harder, as this group gelled, as they kind of figured out the different ways to play, to me, Ant obviously rose to the top, and it was clear he was the alpha of this team. He was the best player on the team, and I think he was the go-to guy ultimately. So I think we see this time and time again. I remember Kevin Durant in 2010, and you could go on throughout recent Team USA history of young guys stepping into another level of stardom over the summer. And to me, Ant is the guy from this team that going into next year, can he be a top 10 guy? Can he be a top 15 guy? Like, I think that's on the table. And with the way that he played, I think it's certainly possible.
Jovan, you mentioned the Jaren Jackson thing. And so I'll quickly highlight it's like this, this FIBA experience, and you just hit on Durant. That's the kind of the penultimate example of a guy who made the most of it, kept his career kind of ascending from there. And that is something that often comes out of this experience, but it doesn't always go that way. You do see times when it doesn't mean these particular players are going to have bad NBA seasons, but man, Jaren Jackson Jr. goes from being the guy his teammates are voting his best in camp to, getting dominated on the glass and really not being impactful in the way that he is for the Grizzlies on most nights. That was strange. Cam Johnson struggles, Brandon Ingram struggles. There are guys where, as I watch the tournament, man, from a human standpoint, you find yourself honestly feeling bad for him because, first of all, once they lose out on the gold, we all know the expectations back home. So I don't care what they say. Like, they get on that plane, they felt like they failed, and they did in terms of the goal. Then on top of that, imagine being one of those players who decides to give up your summer and to go do this thing and thinks that it's going to help propel you for the forthcoming NBA season, and then to just not have it pan out. And there was a handful of guys like that. I do, though, want to keep looking at things through the NBA lens. So, John, I'm going to throw it back to you. Give me more perspective and your thoughts on, where this kind of takes the T-Wolves and what you see out of them this season. They are on, I think, most people's short list of fascinating teams. Like you got teams that are star-studded. We're going to watch, okay, in Phoenix, what's going to happen with Bradley Beal coming in, that whole group. Minnesota, in terms of a fascinating, nuanced, like you used the word crunchy earlier. A lot of folks are watching. Can they make this thing, hum a little bit better in the second year with Rudy? How do you see it now?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the most encouraging thing is what you saw from Edwards, and like seemed poised to take that next step. And I think that the thing that makes them most confident about where they're going with him in the middle of things is that he's had really good playoff performances in his first two series. Against Memphis, he was great. Against Denver, he was really, really good. And so he has shown an ability when the lights are brightest to deliver and to be the kind of player that other teams just don't have an answer for. And that's like you said earlier, Sam, that's the hardest thing to, I think, acquire in the league. And so if you have that guy, that's a big step. The other good thing for them is that Karl Anthony Towns played really well for the Dominican Republic. He shot the ball well, looked like he was in great shape.
Man mentally, of the people, Karl Anthony Towns.
Yeah,
man.
mentally
Celebrating
he
with
was
the
into
regular
it.
folks.
Exactly. So he was having a lot of fun, and he's kind of a vibes player. So when he's having fun, I think is when he's his most effective on the court as well. And so obviously him missing 52 games last year with his injuries led to a lot of the clunkiness, a lot of the disjointedness that you did see with Rudy, with the trade for Mike Conley. It just like never gave this team any foundation to build upon, really. And so I think that both Edwards and Towns are going to be in great shape coming into camp, healthy, coming off of really good international play. And so that should allow them to be just on firmer footing and have a better idea of how to play. Now, on the flip side of it, we can say, that they should be encouraged about Ant and Cat, but Rudy didn't play that well for France in the international in FIBA, and France was a huge disappointment. And so I think there's going to be a lot of eyes on Rudy Gobert going into this. And is he just was last year, and was France just kind of some anomalous struggles, or was this the start of a decline and at 31 years old? And I think that's going to be the biggest answer or a question mark for them. And can they get Rudy back to at least being, really dominant defensively and helpful offensively, or are they really stuck trying to work around what they have with Rudy here? That's a question mark going into camp.
Last thought on that front, then we're going to take a quick break here, but what can you share about how you feel, where you feel like the front office and ownership's, perspective and kind of strategy is on that front right now? Meaning, you wrote recently about all the discussion about Anthony Edwards and Patrick Beverley saying that he needs to go somewhere else. And you kind of pointed out, hey, folks, he got a 5-year contract that hasn't even started yet. So he's locked in for a long time. Huge money to Cat and to Rudy. When it comes to Tim Conley, kind of more than anybody else, head of that front office and the way he sees things, what sort of approach do you think they're taking to this season in terms of how patient they will be? Is it months? Is it still years with this group? How do you see that part?
Yeah, I mean, this is a big season coming up for this core and what they're going to do with it going forward. Ant got his extension. Jaden McDaniels is due to get a hefty extension himself. Rudy's making max money. Towns is making max money. And so they want to give this every opportunity to work. They want to give this roster construction the ability to play together, and they really want to see it. They don't feel like they really got a good chance last season to do it. So they're going into this wanting the best and wanting to see it play out. But if it doesn't, if they stumble, if they are not making progress, if they're still in the play-in conversation, if they're one and done in a playoffs or something like that again, and then you look at the financial penalties that are going to come with all of this money committed to all these guys, something would have to change. And so I do think this is sort of a prove it season for this team. And if it's not going well in the first several months of the season, could they look to, mix things up at the trade deadline? Maybe. I think more likely is they will look next summer and let the dust settle and see where they're at before they make a drastic trade of any kind. But this is the big season for, will Rudy be here for a long time? Will Cat be here for a long time? What's going to happen with Jaden McDaniels? Like, all of these things are going to play out in one way or another this season coming up.